What's up, gentlemen? Happy to see everybody back again for yet another episode of the Blind Pig, courtesy of bgobsession.com, where you can come hang out, mix it up. Please join the board. More than happy to have new members, returning members, some old friends that have disappeared. Bring them back. Before we jump off, we'll do the intros. Top left is Mark. He hails as Ohm. Bottom left is John. He hails as Boone. Bottom right is Bob. He hails as Neophyte, and my name is Derek. You can find me as Silent Threat. So if you ever want to put a face to an avatar on the message board, that's the easiest way to do it. So I guess we'll dive right in. I know we talked about trying to keep this one at an hour tonight, so we don't
completely. We're gonna try to keep it. We're gonna try to keep it fluid.
Fluid, yes, exactly. A very fluid situation. So before we get into the roster stuff, before we get into surprises and cuts, I just have to call out Ron Rivera for once again finding a way to contradict himself and put his foot in his mouth, where he apparently said not only did they not know what they had in Sam Howell, but it was a hindsight thing that he made those comments that we were in the middle of a playoff push, so that's a hard decision to make. I could rant for 10 minutes about this, but I would be curious to see how you guys feel about it before I respond. A big deal, little deal, no deal, or Derek just needs to calm down.
I have a bigger problem with him not knowing what they didn't have in Carson Wentz, because everyone else in America had pretty much figured out that like the guy was totally washed. And
well, and to that point, John, a lot of us were rooting for us to put him back in at the end of last year, because we did not want to leave any doubt that he was going to find a way to stay on the roster in 2023. Unless I'm wrong.
Happened, right? Which actually happened. He solved the Carson Wentz problem by putting Carson Wentz back in.
Sorry, not to interrupt you, John.
I'm just gonna. Well, here's what I got to say, and it's pretty brief. I have a lot less problem with Ron talking because he can't control himself, so he's going to do that over and over again. I mean, it's only been like a couple weeks since he did it the last time. I would rather. I'm more concerned about the decision making in moments like, and I've ranted about the whole I don't know. Oh, I didn't know we could be eliminated thing. Not really, like acting as if he hadn't even laid eyes on Sam Howell the entire 2022 season. I mean, all we heard in 2022 was he wasn't ready. All of a sudden he's ready. And now he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. So I don't know. I know Rivera's always going to have that problem of not knowing what not to say and trying to backpedal and downplay things when he makes mistakes, which we all do that, I guess. But I just wish he would be a little bit more in the moment and making some better decisions at times. That's what I got.
Yeah, I don't have anything real different from that, John. I understand what I can usually parse through the awkward way that he says things now to see. Yeah, I can understand what he's trying to say. It's just he says it so badly, A, and B, a lot of it is stuff that really doesn't need to be said at all. Just you don't have to answer every question. You're not on the stand. You're not under penalty of perjury. Just say we're moving on to Arizona. And the part that I do agree with you with, I would really like to have thought that they would have seen more from Sam in practice, particularly once he was the number one backup and getting reps against the defense, right? They saw him every day. It is hindsight, right? To look back, and I understand they were trying to check a lot of boxes, watch Wentz play, really find out if Taylor, was going to take that next step and all that. So it was complicated. He probably would have been better just keeping his mouth shut on this one.
Yeah, I had two thoughts for those that to wrap a little context around this. The conversation started at least on our boards. For those of you that may not be on the board, the conversation there started following the SI article that came out that had a lot of the backstory around Sam Howell and where he came from and our decision to make him the guy going into this season. And I read that article and I thought it was a pretty good article. There were a few things in there that I hadn't seen anywhere else that were fascinating to me. But my two big takeaways. The first was the fact that we had Howell rated as a second or third round selection, second round selection. Thanks. And waited to the fifth round because we were worried about hurting Carson Wentz's ego. I'm sorry, I have a real issue with that. If your football players have such a lousy ego that they can't deal with competition, they're in the wrong business. You've got the wrong guy. Period. The end. It's just that simple. And you shouldn't have to explain that decision to your quarterback. Your quarterback should look at it and go, they're bringing in young talent because I'm not a young guy anymore. They're also bringing in young talent because this is a dirty business and people get hurt all the time. And they may need him during the course of the season because God knows what's going to happen to me. It's not a stretch to get this figured out. And if your ego's that lousy and you're the coach making a decision based on the ego, you're not making good decisions for your team. That was the first thing. And the second thing was, did Ron spend all his time with the offense? Did he never go look at the starting defense that was running against the scout team so that he could see Sam Howell for himself? I realized maybe he was there to watch the starting defense, but surely he laid eyes on Sam Howell with the scout team himself. It wasn't all his players coming to him. You know, if it was all the players coming to him, I want to know what the hell my head coach was doing during practices. I want to know where he was and what he was paying attention to and why players had to tell him that this guy was doing a good job. It's his job to evaluate the guys during practice, isn't it? I don't, just asking for a friend. I don't know.
It's in sharp contrast to the point you made about Wentz's ego or being concerned about that. And then you got Jerry Jones out there picking up Trey Lance without even talking to the coach or his future Hall of Fame quarterback. So anyway,
sure, future Hall of Fame.
Wait, did we just put Dak in the Hall of Fame? Did you really just put?
I was putting it forward as a Dallas fan would.
Hey,
I live
Dak's,
here.
Dak's got 60 million against the cap next year. They're not going to be
going
paying
nowhere.
60 million.
Yeah.
So, I guess just to tie a bow on this, I can't really say anything too much beyond what you guys have already said, other than the fact that it's exhausting. This is just another reason why I have little faith that we'll ever truly be a winner with Ron Rivera as our head coach. And I know that might sound pointed, but it's just my opinion because of things like this. It's how many other teams have taken a quarterback that they believed was the guy after they paid a guy and they played him because he was the better option, right? Like it's throughout history that we've seen that happen. And then now we apparently took the guy who we had as a second round pick. We waited till the fifth round. And then a year later, we're going to sit here and say things like we didn't know what we had in him. How do you not know what you have in a guy that you have a second round grade on? Like that doesn't the computing ain't computing in my brain with that.
Yeah. In this room right here, you guys, I think we have all independently said at some point that we all think this is the Ron Rivera's last year. So I'm just kind of looking at this as just more and more evidence of same. You know, it's just the latest Ron sticking his foot in his mouth and not right. Do we have to go through it all again? We probably should,
don't,
since we're bashing him, but we all think he's done a nice job with the culture and that he's a nice man.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all true. It's also true that as a head coach, he is way less than inspiring. And I know he lost me sometime in the middle of last year. I know he lost John earlier than that.
Yeah. And we have another one of those on the business side that can't get out of his own way. So between the two of them, if I don't ever listen to Ron Rivera after an event or Jason Wright, I'm good to go. I'm a lot better place as a fan when I don't have to like read all the social media stuff about what they said and what does it mean? Why did they say it?
That's becoming a feeding frenzy now, right? Every time he opens his mouth.
The only other thing I would throw out there in moderate defense, I guess, to kind of flip the coin over and look at the other side of it. You know, I look at what went on. We alluded to Trey Lance a minute ago and his impending or his trade to Dallas. I look at San Francisco, and I don't think any of us put Ron Rivera and Kyle Shanahan's league at the moment, right? I mean, maybe years ago, maybe, I don't know, but Kyle Shanahan's young and innovative and seems to be one of the brightest coaches in the NFL today. They said in training camp last year that Trey Lance was the starter. He got hurt. They went to Jimmy Garoppolo. Garoppolo played better than Lance played in that offense. Garoppolo gets hurt. And the third guy on the depth chart, Mr. Irrelevant, the last rookie taken in the draft, comes in and makes both Garoppolo and Lance look forgettable. Did they not know what they had? I think the answer is probably, yeah, they didn't exactly know what they had. And even if they did, they're not going to start Brock Purdy over Trey Lance, who they traded up for. The fact that they were willing to make that switch this year, in all honesty, kind of blows my mind a little bit because of the capital that they had invested in Trey Lance and the egg that they had to kind of wipe off their face to go do that. And so I can't completely blame Rivera. It's not like our coaches were, the guys in San Francisco, I think, are better offensive coaches than we are, and they weren't smart enough to make that switch during training camp or earlier in the year. They were only forced to it. At least we made it voluntarily.
If Ron Rivera had not been browbeat, whatever you want to say, talked into playing Hal in the season finale
by Taylor Heineke,
I guarantee you, Jacoby Brissett would be the starting quarterback right now. Mm-hmm. I guarantee you.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's absolutely fair. I'm just saying there was another team in the league that effectively got forced into it, who most people would say has better offensive coaching talent than we do, certainly than we did last year prior to Bieniemy getting here. And they only got there because of injury. So I can see how, maybe this kind of thing happens. Although we were struggling so bad at quarterback that at some point in time, you got to think that, man, let's give it a try. He's got the physical tools, obviously.
So speaking of Jacoby Brissett, gentlemen,
Cincinnati.
Let's transition real quick and talk about the last glorified scrimmage. And he takes, so I do have a take right off. And Derek, I know we're just like steamrolling you here tonight, brother.
You're fine.
Go ahead, Martin.
I was really, really critical of Jacoby Brissett early on in that game. And when I went back and looked at it later without the emotion and the instant reaction, he kind of got his shit together and finished off, I think, pretty strong and looking like a legit backup quarterback, like the guy. I like Jake Fromm, and I'm glad he's back on the practice squad. He is, right? But yes. I think it's the right call with Jacoby, and I feel pretty good about him as a backup quarterback, given his experience, his proven track record as a player and a veteran presence and all that. I think it's a really good situation for us.
I rewatched the game late this afternoon, actually, the condensed version.
Yep.
And I was struck by the fact that it feels like we're with Jacoby, and then this is, I don't know, maybe it's a criticism. I'm not sure it's a criticism, more like an observation at the moment. The long part of the game goes away. He doesn't look at anything past about 15 yards. Everything he hit against Cincinnati that I can think of right off the top of my head was within that 5, 10, 15-yard range, within the line of scrimmage. So that whole long game that Howell gives us that we didn't have last year kind of disappears with Jacoby Brissett. But other than that, Mark, I got to agree with you. I felt much better about the end of he looked shaky to start with. He didn't look like a comfortable camper, but he settled into it.
I thought he played fine. The one thing that I notice is the big contrast between he and Howell, other than the arm strength, is he doesn't handle pressure as well. And as the guy who's played all these games and is the vet, that's a little surprising. I've seen him make a lot of bad passes when the pocket collapses and he's, under more pressure than usual. So maybe, I don't know whether that's typical of him or not, but that's one thing I've noticed. But I thought he certainly played better than he did in the Ravens game.
Yeah, the Ravens game was concerning. You saw
It
him play in the
was.
Ravens game, and you started to get a little worried. But yeah, I agree with all of you guys. He bounced back. And I mean, he also had like Tinsley had a hell of a game, and he was wide open, so he had options. So hopefully, one other thing I did notice about Brissett is he is capable of stepping up, but then and he appears to have his eyes downfield, but I do give him credit. He's kind of got an idea when it is a good time to run too. I never really saw that part, watched him that much in Indian and in New England, but I did. I was kind of. I always knew he kind of had that card in his deck, but it was obvious that the guy is he's capable of utilizing his legs, and he's got good enough vision that he can be effective at it. Now I wouldn't call any designed runs, but I mean when the pocket breaks down, he's pretty good about stepping up and eluding the pocket, the pass rush.
I do wonder if the play was exactly the same in preseason, and it was Fromm that was the vet that we were paying whatever it is, $7 million to, whatever. I don't know how much Brissett's being paid, and Brissett was kind of the practice squatter competing. I wonder if Brissett would be the backup right now. That I will say that, because if you just look at their play, I'm not sure that Brissett has outplayed Fromm. In fact, I know he hasn't, and at least in what we've seen. I don't know what went on at training camp and everything else, but
Fromm was 13 of 18 for 144, 2 TDs, no INTs, and a 132.6 rating, which is almost 30 points higher than Brissett's rating the other night. So now he got more game time too, but
And was going against threes more than Brissett.
well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, to me, I think this one, I really can't criticize the decision to go with Brissett as the backup. I know they invested more in him, and I don't know what the number is, but they paid the man to come in and be experienced, and he is. And I think I heard earlier this week that last year playing with a terrible Browns team, right? He was still in the top 15 rated starting quarterbacks in the NFL when he played. If I'm wrong on where he was, I apologize, but every time I've ever seen him play in real NFL games, he looks like an okay NFL quarterback. He's not great, but
I
he's
understand
solid.
why they're going with him. So please don't make
Yeah.
that me saying he should be third string. I'm just saying that contract and the experience, to the extent that really matters. I don't know how much it will matter. I hope we don't even see him, but I do think Fromm has done a really good job.
He did. And I don't think it was probably an easy decision for him to put him. I would not have been surprised to see Fromm get picked up on waivers, but he didn't.
A lot of good quarterbacks out there. I mean, there's a lot of big name quarterbacks out there that have gotten released.
They're starting to get snatched up.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're talking like Matt Corral, Bailey Zappi, guys that have had
I was
some.
thinking Zappi, not Corral so much, because I'm not sure Corral can play.
Well,
but
I just mean these were hyped up players.
Your man crush from a couple drafts ago was
Who?
released.
Kellen Mond.
Kellen Mond.
Yeah, he's been cut twice this preseason.
I think I think they put him back on the practice squad though.
They did.
So Brissett signed a 1-year deal, and he's a salary cap hit this year of 8.5.
And if you cut him, you only save 500,000, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So who else stood out in that Bengals game, you guys? Who else made a good or bad?
Bad, Kaz Allen. I think Kaz Allen solidified his inability to make the roster.
Especially with the muffed punt, man.
The muffed punt, the fair catch on the 6, and then 2 or 3 drop passes.
And two pretty blatant drops. The first one was a lot tougher because he's moving over the middle. The second one is like to extend a series, and it kind of hits him in the hands and bounces out. But you have to think that on the practice squad, he's going to be catching a lot of punts for the next few weeks. And if coming down the stretch, that might be the kind of guy you activate if you think that if you can trust him to catch some punts, and maybe you need a playmaker. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get some game action before the year's over.
I think you're right about that. And he did have the one return for like 30 yards that it looked like he came pretty close to
One
breaking.
more step. One more step.
Chris Rodriguez is my guy, man. Go ahead.
Yeah, Rodriguez jumped off the tape for me this afternoon too, and he's jumped at all 3 games. All 3 games.
He's averaging 7 yards a carry in preseason. Of course,
He's going to be very interesting. I think we're looking at three active running backs on game day every week, which will be very interesting.
If they can trust him on pass pro and to be where he's supposed to be, yeah, he's gonna get some reps.
What the hell happened to Jonathan Williams, man? Because Jonathan Williams was playing in that Bengals game, and now he's on IR. What the hell happened?
Several guys were playing in that Bengals game that are now on IR, John.
Yeah,
Ripped in the locker room, dude.
my guy Brandon Dillon, I guess, developed a mysterious sore toe, or I don't know, but
4th round offensive lineman.
Yeah.
You know, he's a mysterious rotator cuff injury after playing almost the entire game.
So you remember when we used to sing Joe Gibbs praises for hiding people, right? So that nothing's changed. It's just different. They just do it in different ways now.
To go back to Kaz Allen for a second, you know, I've been all about him all preseason. And then one of our members, and I forget who it was, I don't think it was anybody here, but I should remember, in a thread on the board went and did the math on actual returns and the number of times a return man actually touches the ball legitimately during a game other than to fair catch it or watch it go over his head standing in the end zone. And it turns out to be like 3 plays a game. That's it. That is all.
Is that combined punts and kicks?
Yeah. And that's assuming you have the same guy doing both, Mark. Right. You know, so, I mean, if we're only talking about 3 touches a game, granted, Kaz Allen can obviously be electric. We've all seen it in punt returns and a couple of kick returns in the preseason. But if we're only talking about 3 a game, I kind of agree with the coaches at this point. I'd rather take Dax Milne. I mean, the guy only had 1 catch the other night against Cincinnati, but it was a catch for a first down in traffic, contested, and then he got absolutely hammered by like 3 guys. He ended up on the bottom of the pile, and he came out holding the football and moved the chains. If that's all he does every week is 1 catch and plus legitimately fielding punts without dropping anything, that may be worth a roster spot.
Well, I think the frustration there is not the comfort level. It's the frustration there is that he doesn't bring anything to the third aspect of the third aspect of your team: offense, defense, special teams. Like, I mean, I guess, is he good enough that he could pop 1 or 2 that go for over 30? Sure, but if he breaks in the open field, do we honestly believe he's going to run away from anybody? Like, that's the concern.
I don't think that's a problem. I don't think he's going to break into the clear very often. He's done it maybe once in 3 years.
But I also don't have any problems with him fielding anything either.
I think the point is
become an excitement factor.
The contribution is not fucking it up. That's the contribution.
Right.
That's a pretty big contribution based on think of all the guys we've tried at returns who could not hold on to the ball. Like,
I know.
One of the Sims. We've tried like 100
Steven
guys.
Sims Jr., Brandon Banks.
I'm okay with it.
But I guess the bigger point is, like, me personally, I want us to start to focus on that as being a part of the offense instead of just the bare minimum of being the guy doesn't fumble. You know what I like? I want us to put a guy back there, and I'm not saying he might have 1 touchdown in a season, and ultimately it might not affect the game at all. But it changes the way the punter punts the ball when he's afraid that the guy's going to be able to make a return, and it changes, and it changes the way the special teams aligns, and it changes. Does it actually account for wins and losses?
Well, we need Kaz Allen to learn how to
catch the damn ball, but it doesn't have to be Kaz Allen. You know what I mean? But I just don't want it to be an afterthought anymore.
And it has been for this coaching staff. They have never made the effort to really go out and bring in a guy to be a return specialist. It's been a a hole in our resume. Derek, I'm 100% with you. I'm not satisfied with a guy who just doesn't fuck it up. That's an important position, and you watch every week on NFL Red Zone 2 or 3 games where some
Somebody
young
breaks one.
explosive guy breaks a return that wins a game, and we don't get that here. So it's not about Dax for me. It's about this staff has not taken that position very seriously.
The way the universe works, I guarantee you Milne's going to take one to the house in the opener.
Probably because I said
Guarantee you.
something.
And I'll take it all.
Yeah, but here's
back.
when he's going to do it when we're up 34-10, and it does, and it
care.
means nothing, but it's a stat sheet marker.
But I want to bring up one thing. Not fucking it up is actually fairly important. Washington won 2 football games last year, largely because the other team couldn't cleanly field punts.
Yeah,
agreed.
Chicago and Dallas, both on the strength of brilliant defensive special teams plays when the other team couldn't just catch the damn ball. That's all they had to do.
But I guess that's my point, is when are we going to take that level and elevate the expectation, Bob? When are we going to look at
all right, so we say we didn't take this seriously. 2 years ago, we had a punt and kick returner who was actually a pretty decent 4th or 5th receiver, and we let him walk away for $1 million and go to San Diego on $1 million contract because we weren't willing to pony that up. But we went out and got him the year before specifically to be that dude,
and
he was
really good for a year.
Wife. He had to have been eyeballing Rivera's wife or something. I still don't. I've never heard anyone give a good explanation for that.
Or he simply just said, "I've made enough money. I want to go back to the West Coast." You're right.
Maybe.
I don't understand why DeAndre Carter was not signed.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have offered him a 2 or 3 year contract because he was playing that well, and not just
in the return game.
No,
he was converting first downs like he thought he was Art Monk. Obviously, I'm not comparing the two, but yeah, he had some catches where you just look at the guy and like, how did you the awareness was just off the charts.
He was a better returner and a better receiver than Dax Milne is. Now, granted, we did turn around and spend a 1st-round pick on Jahan Dotson, and if they knew they were planning on doing that, I kind of understand why you're not worried about keeping Carter around for the passing game. But even so, we passed on a guy that really did a great job for us, and I felt like was a threat. But anyway.
I think I heard that in training camp this year, they tried out various other options as returners in practices, but we never saw anybody in a game, did we? Other than Allen and Milne, the only guys that fielded kicks.
I heard on the radio
they have Gibson penciled in as
I heard Gibson was taking kick returns, right? And then I heard on the radio today, Craig Hoffman was on the radio today, I believe, and he was talking to somebody. And apparently, Jahan Dotson fields punts every practice.
Yeah, break him out like we used to break out 28
or 89. Yeah, when the punter's standing on his own goal line, and you figure he's going to try to line drive one and try to get 55 out of it, you put Jahan Dotson back there because he's going to have some space.
But speaking of Mitchell Tinsley. I was telling Derek before this started, that name, I think it was pretty clear to me, and probably to you guys too, watching the second half of that game. This guy is just roaming open through the secondary repeatedly. I know it's against the guys who are slicing bologna this coming weekend, but all the other guys are playing against them too, and they're covered, right? This guy just keeps getting open. Yeah. And I found myself thinking today, who the hell is this guy? And then he's an undrafted free agent who not only makes the team, but makes the active roster, the 53. I'd be willing to bet that that's 1 or 2% a year of UDFAs who make the 53.
Especially at a premium position like wide receiver.
Do you know that every single guy we drafted this year made the team?
You know that Ron Rivera has never cut a rookie that he has drafted?
Oh, I'm not saying I'm not giving a value judgment to it. I'm saying that every single one, including Andre Jones, and I'm not talking about practice squad. I'm talking about
active roster,
the active roster, except for Braden Daniels, who's IR. But
And I don't know whether Tinsley makes the active roster all season long, but I'm absolutely convinced that he made the active roster because they knew he wasn't going to clear waivers if they cut him this week.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I'm
let's-
absolutely convinced of that.
Absolutely.
Let's segue to the 53-man roster and the practice squad. And
Wait, let's back up for a second because there was one other guy that flashed for me in the Cincinnati game, oddly enough, and that was Hudson. It felt to
He
me
had a
like
great game.
I thought Hudson had a great game. I honestly felt like Hudson was the only guy out there on defense that was desperate to stop somebody.
That was hungry. Yeah.
Yeah, he looked hungry every play, and he looked like he was putting himself in good positions. I was, granted, again, with the caveat that we're talking about 2s and 3s, but he looked like a man amongst boys for the most part. And he was the only guy on our defensive unit that really jumped out at me consistently play after play.
So can I run with that for 1 second before we
Sure.
move on to the 53? I said it before the game that I wanted to go into this one walking out of it with a little bit better feeling about the defense. And I came out of it with the exact same feeling I went into it. I have now watched 3 straight games where we had breakdown after breakdown after breakdown and wide open spaces in our secondary and getting blown up at the point of attack. I know it's preseason. I know we're not calling plays. I know that we have good starters, but I saw 2 sides. I saw special teams, offense and defense, right? Our special teams and offense showed enough flashes and looking like an organized football team for me to I feel pretty good about them coming out of preseason. I never saw that defense. They'd have a series or 2 where they look kind of tight and then it would all fall apart again. I hope I'm 100% wrong, but I am going into opening day against whatever the kid's name is that's going to be starting against us. I know we're not going against Mahomes in week 1. It's a good thing because I don't get the impression that defense is ready to roll. I hope I'm wrong.
They did hold
this-
89 rushing yards. That's a positive, but the passing, they pretty much had their way with us at times.
Oh, I thought we gave up a lot of big old runs too. It just seemed to me we were getting
89
pushed off the line of scrimmage all preseason.
You know,
Somebody tell me, somebody make me feel better about that.
I can't. And my concern, Mark, is that
No starters.
Jack Del Rio. Well, no, it's not the starters. It's I don't know if Jack Del Rio is ready for opening weekend. I'm sorry, but the whole play calling thing, you kind of got to get back in the groove of that too. And this is a defense that for 3 years now has started slowly. Every single season, this defense starts slowly, and it's game 4, game 5, game 6 before it feels like we're really in the groove. And what we always hear is, well, this guy's a step out of place. That guy's over there. This guy's someplace else. Well, at the end of the day, that's coaching. And here we are again with guys desperate to earn a job, not in the right place. Are the starters going to be in the right place? Rashad Wildgoose played a lot last year. He was victimized repeatedly by Cincinnati's 3rd string, 4th string quarterback the other night. I'm with you. I'm worried about it, Mark.
All right then.
Sorry, I can't make you feel
No,
better.
I can't make you feel better because I share the feeling. I'm
Yeah.
nervous. Everybody's writing this defense as though it's going to be a top 3, top 5, top 8 defense, and they haven't proven that. And we
They
haven't
were
seen it
last year. I mean, I'm just trying to be the voice of reason a little bit because they were a top 8 defense last year.
The end of the season, the beginning of the season, they were the reason.
No,
we
I
won
mean,
games.
look at the rankings. They were one of the
yet.
better defenses in
And
NFL.
John, that's fair, and you are being the voice of reason. But the reasoning is that that the defense appeared to be behind the offense in the preseason. Now that doesn't look. We could get into week 1, and chances are look. The truth is we're playing a team that does not appear to have winning as their priority right now, and chances are we're playing a team that is not an offensive juggernaut that is even close to what we're going to be facing in week 3 or 4. So maybe it's a tune-up game. Hopefully it's a tune-up game. Where does that lie? I don't know. The chances are, because if you want to read the back of the baseball card, they're going to fall in that. It'd be a top 10 defense. I just haven't
I
seen
may
it
well
yet.
be freaking out. I may be screaming bloody murder about the defense in 3 weeks. I'm just not going to do it in the preseason.
Did you
And I'm
guys
not,
see the article that Kime put out on ESPN, I think yesterday or the day before, about the defense?
Mm-mm.
I read it earlier today, and the whole thing was about everybody on the defensive side of the ball talking about how the mission this year is to start fast. Start the year fast and start individual games fast. I saw nothing in preseason that showed me that we're likely to do that. John, you're 100% right. We ended the year as a top 10 defense. The first 5 or 6 weeks, we were like 28th or 29th, and we were 1-4 because the defense couldn't stop anybody. That's what I'm saying.
That was 2 years ago.
That was last year and 2 years ago, brother.
What last year wasn't nearly as bad as the year before. The
They-
year
they-
before, when we were like, what happened to this defense?
Well, we were 1-4 at the start of last year, and Detroit and somebody else just went up and down the field on us. And we
Yes.
lost at least 2 games there that we had scored enough points to win. I'm just saying, if they're going to start fast, it's going to be like somebody flipped the proverbial light switch, because it's been off so far, and I hope he can turn it on by opening day.
I'm worried about the ability to start fast with the number of reps some of our starters haven't gotten. You know, I mean, along the defensive line, they've got a grand total of 2 series, and that's it in the preseason. Maybe 3 series, and most of those were in game 1, right?
Not even.
None of them played.
Chase
none of
Young.
them
Chase
played-
Young played 4 snaps.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, how do you start fast if you haven't had game speed reps? I don't understand. I don't understand how that works. Granted, I'm not an NFL coach. My checkbook.
We've been
reflects
devastated
that.
by injuries. You look at, I mean, we've had 2, like, I'm just saying it's a balancing act. You go out there and John Allen tears his ACL in a fucking preseason game. That's going to be a problem. I mean, I think they're just trying to
All right.
balance. And I mean, it's Jack Del Rio's job. It's his ass. They go out there and stink it up. He won't be here. He may not be here anyway next year, but he definitely won't be here if the defense with all that talent doesn't perform.
I don't think any of us are sitting here saying that this defense is going to underperform or be terrible. All I'm saying is that I think, and Bob and Mark, tell me if I'm wrong. I think what we're trying to say is we haven't seen enough to give us a level of confidence to believe it's going to live up to what we hope it is yet. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not. We just haven't seen it yet.
I don't think Jack Del Rio cares.
Oh, he doesn't.
Feel about
No,
his defense right now.
No, I guarantee you Jack Del Rio doesn't care. My problem is Jack Del Rio didn't care last year, and he didn't care the year before, and we didn't start fast.
All right. I got it.
What is going on when John is the one trying to tell us all to chill the fuck out?
I know, man. I know.
I just think, I mean, again, guys, it's the fucking preseason. It doesn't historically, I'll say it for the 800th time this month. Historically, preseason performance by any unit doesn't mean anything in terms of overall success. It does not. So that's all I got.
We are going to find out.
We just went 3-0 in the preseason, so we're doomed now.
And I'm debating whether or not to run out and pick up Connor off the Arizona roster for my opening weekend running back.
All right, the final 53.
Well, the initial 53.
Well, right, final. So what were anybody have any surprises in what they did?
I'm surprised they kept Hodges. You're running 4 tight ends, but we're seeing reports that Logan Thomas is 100%. I've been listening to again Hoffman and Logan Paulson, and I guess their thought process was that Hodges has been showing that he is such a freak he could be a starting caliber tight end in the NFL, and they know that. So their concern is that they don't want to. They don't think he's gonna last. And he might not be a starting caliber tight end for 18 months. You know, he might need a full season and then some to be that, but he's capable of that. So I guess, the tip of the hat to Rivera and the front office and the personnel department. All I've ever wanted is our team to have the best 53 players on the roster that are the best 53 players. And if that's one more tight end and you drop a running back because that tight end is more valuable into the offense. You don't get, you don't get rigid and, oh, well, we have to have 4 running backs, we have to have 3 tight ends, we have to have 6 wide receivers, we have to have 11 offensive linemen, whatever. But Hodges offensively was my surprise. Defensively, there really wasn't one. Kind of expected 4 linebackers.
Yeah, but I didn't expect Drew White to make it in over Mayo or Effler. Mayo and Effler were both on the roster last year. Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, that's second string, right?
That's third string. That's third string at that point.
Well,
right?
On the depth chart, he's listed as second string behind Barton because they've got Barton and
as
Davis
middle,
both
as
listed
Mike.
as starters.
Okay.
Yeah, they've got Barton and Davis both listed as starters.
I thought it was interesting on the depth chart that there's nobody behind Sam Cosmi at right guard listed. And let's see, there was one other one. Stromberg is listed as the third team center. There's nobody listed as the second team center. So I don't know what that's about.
Yeah, I don't think that that the new ownership group has put their imprint on the website yet.
Maybe not.
My guess is that's a reflection of them probably bringing Tyler Larson back. Because Larson will be the second string center.
I was just surprised where they kept extra guys. You know, they kept 11 defensive linemen, and then not only did they keep 4 tight ends on the active roster. I mean, we got tight ends coming out of our ears. We got 2 tight ends on the IR list. I'm pretty sure we have. Do we have some tight ends on the practice squad?
Yeah, no, because Brandon Dillon's on
Dillon and
on IR.
Jesus, no.
Dillon and Caden Smith are on the IR list.
No, and the guy who blew his knee out in the first, Armani Rogers.
Armani.
Oh yeah, well he was already on IR, but
yeah,
so we not only kept 4 tight ends on the active roster, we kept 7 wide receivers. That was surprising to me. That's a lot. I mean, normally we carry 6 and 3, and we're carrying 7 and 4. And I guess the other thing that surprised me a little bit was I feel a little better now that they brought Larson back to the practice squad, but just the O-line.
Probably
yeah, they'll probably move him back, but
that's probably why there's nobody slotted
because the situation is fluid.
Yeah, this is.
Are you doing like John, you got a bubble gif or something in the background?
Honestly, John, that's probably why there's.
I hope that's what it is.
The second center, because it's going to be Larson.
He's gargling, John.
I don't know what he's doing.
He's gargling his bourbon.
He's trying to top my hat from last week.
Just keeping it fluid.
My God.
Andre
Jones Jr., man. We got a lot of juniors on this squad, by the way. But Andre Jones, I thought that was a really cool 7th rounder making it. And he made it. He didn't make it like by his toenails. He made it.
That's a guy who I think is going to get playing time. They will be subbing him in on special packages 2 or 3 times a game and just say, go hunting, go hunt.
Speaking of special packages. Oh, wait, that's for the X-rated.
That's the other podcast.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm struck. We kept 11 guys on the defensive line, but they put Mathis on short-term IR today. Curtis Brooks is on IR. David Cotta is on IR.
How long do they have to stay out for short-term IR?
4 weeks minimum, I think.
4 weeks. That's what I was going to say, but it would have been a guess. But Mark,
I think that's right. So I got to admit, I'm starting to get a real empty feeling about Big Phil. It just doesn't look good. And when you, at the beginning of your career, you cannot get on the field on your first season, and you couldn't even get out of the first week of training camp. I'm starting to wonder if that's just gonna be a big hole. I hope I'm wrong, but
it's not even like
hardly missed
do we
any
even
time.
know what we have in the guy. I mean, that's the thing. He's played so little that we don't really know.
We don't know. And they can't just get. I mean, he's not going anywhere. They've got to see this out for this year and probably next year.
Yeah.
But at some point, he's got to get his ass on the field and show that he belongs out there. and can stay out there.
By the way, did everybody notice that Troy Apke's on IR? We've found a way to keep the man, even though we've got sufficient depth at safety now that there's really nowhere for him to play.
I think they love the guy on teams, right? Isn't he a headhunter
Sure.
on teams? And that's worth something.
Hold on, timeout, Mark. So we're putting such an emphasis to keep a roster spot open for a guy that plays well on teams, and he is not the returner. Explain this to me. Sorry, not to go back to the previous conversation, but that's the frustrating part in the whole dynamic of it all.
Sure.
Well, and I kind of have to bring up the fact that, you know, he's technically a safety. I have not been impressed with Quan Martin through 3 games.
He had 1 pick, but he looked terrible in the drive before that
I mean, well, we were joking about it last week. He had a pick, but he had a pick because he was so beaten on the play that he was still in bounds to catch the bobble.
Right.
I mean, he did just get there. I mean, I don't know. I
know,
like
but
it's true.
I hated that pick. I hated that pick because we had to move up and grab an O-line stud at that spot. We just had to, and we didn't. I don't understand it.
He's also the guy that Brian Mitchell tagged as being out of position on Cincinnati's first touchdown. Yeah, the first touchdown against Cincinnati. I mean, the receiver was open by a country mile in the back of the end zone, and Mitchell was like, they showed the all 22 from the other end zone, and he's like, that's Quan Martin's man.
Yeah, I thought I heard him talking about that too. He wasn't sure that Quan had the primary coverage on that guy. He said, I thought he should have been a little deeper, but somebody else lost the receiver. I think the larger point is well taken, though. Quan did not shine in his first preseason.
No,
he may be a guy that takes a year to develop, and I
feel the same way about Jartavius Martin as I do, Quan Martin. It's like if you could get both of those guys to play on the same page. In all seriousness, I feel that way about Percy Butler. Like, he'll make these flash plays, that like eye-popping plays, and then he'll make a play where you're like, what was he doing on that one?
Isn't he our all-pro special teams guy?
No, that's Jeremy Reeves.
Oh, that's Reeves. You're right.
Yeah.
I mix up my special teams standouts.
Well, Khalid
I do think our defensive backfield looks scary. If you go look at the defensive backfield and look at the names on that list, and you're like, damn,
it's deep.
We might be pretty good.
It's deep. We can get some pressure
on a couple of seasons ago where we're like, we got nobody. I mean,
yeah, we were scrambling trying to figure out. We literally signed Whitaker and Wild Goose in the week leading up to week 1 last year, because we only carried 4 corners into the beginning of the season.
The defense has a chance, and the personnel, it looks like, to be pretty good.
And I will say, this preseason, as frustrated I was with the defense, they turned the ball over a lot. I mean, there was plays being made. There were there were guys in position to make plays. So hopefully that's kind of that is a looking glass into what we can expect going forward.
They're so good they don't need linebackers.
Yeah, apparently. I did love the pickup of Jabril Cox.
Yep. I love that we sniped him from Dallas even more.
Yep. Apparently he didn't want to go back to Dallas. They wanted him on their practice squad, and he said, no, I'm good. I'm going to leave.
I mean, I don't understand how they let that guy go. He's a 4th rounder. He only played like 7 games in the year he was drafted in 21. He tore his ACL, and then last year he came back like midway through the season and played 9 games, but they didn't play him much. And then you let a divisional rival snipe him from you. That's not good. It's good for us, I think.
Yeah.
Did he go onto the active roster?
No, he's on the practice squad.
No, he's on the practice squad.
Okay, because he's not listed on Keim's list from just a few hours ago.
Yeah, it was he came. That was weird because I saw a big list of the whole league's waiver claims, and he wasn't on it. But then I think he was like one of the last ones.
But then they broke news that we were awarded the waiver, that we claimed him off of waivers, right?
Yeah.
So, but hold on, no wait, I don't know though. I saw a report that there was. that they offered him a spot on the practice squad and he declined it. So who knows now? Hold on, now I gotta look.
No, I think you're correct, Eric. I
Talking
want to
about
say
Dallas offered him a spot.
Yeah.
Yes, and he said
Okay.
no. Yeah, the Cowboys discussed bringing him back on their practice squad, but Cox opts for the fresh start elsewhere in the NFC East with a team that had a high grade on him before the 21 draft. That was Mike Garafolo at about 2:30 this afternoon after waivers had cleared.
So the 2023 preseason is behind us. We have a
is.
roster, and all of a sudden we're counting down to opening day.
Yep.
Just like that.
Anybody? I know we're the most critical people of our own team in the history of our own team. As all, I mean, all fans are that way, especially when you're coming off a year when you didn't make the postseason and there's been a lot of turmoil, et cetera. No one's had more turmoil than we have, I don't think. Maybe the Jets, but it's close. But don't you guys? You tell me. I feel like we're definitely a better team coming into 2023 than we were coming into 2022. Anyone have any doubts about that? Or
I agree wholeheartedly.
No, I have more faith right now in, well, I mean, it starts and ends in one position, right? And that's quarterback. And I maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like I might speak for all of us in that I've got more faith in the quarterback position right now than I've had since Kirk Cousins left. And Sam Howell, in my mind, has a higher ceiling than Cousins ever had. So if he does anything early on, now I feel better about the quarterback position than I do since better than, gosh, Mark Rippon. Before that, even, I don't know. Has there been anybody that stood out to anybody since then? Mark Brunell had his moments, but he wasn't brilliant.
Yeah, Brad Johnson had a nice
Trent
little
Green.
run.
Brad Johnson had a decent season. Tony Banks
Trent
had a
Green. Trent Green. Brad Johnson. Of course, we let those guys.
I mean,
go.
there was the mid-year hype of RG3 and what the possibilities could be, but
keep blanking that year out.
But to your point, I don't know that even coming into that season, I think we were all excited, but we hadn't seen anything until the New Orleans game. And after the New Orleans game, I mean, the sentiment was way up here, about the possibilities. But even then, it wasn't comfort. It was just like, holy shit, what's actually possible with this guy at quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect Sam Howell to come in and be a top 5 quarterback in the league, but I expect us to see better quarterback play this year than we have seen in quite some time here. And by that I mean consistently decent. I don't want to put too much pressure on the young man, but I'm kind of excited. I'm really excited to watch this offense do something week 1.
And we will be in section 120 watching exactly that in 10 days.
In 10 days, man.
I do this little game. I've been doing this little game in my head every year for as long as I can remember, with when I try to decide how I feel about the Redskins, Washington football team, Commanders heading after the preseason's over, heading into the year. Say, how would I feel about this team if, and it used to be Tom Brady, because he was the GOAT and he was the alpha at the time. You put Tom Brady on this roster, how does it look? Today, I do that with Patrick Mahomes. You put Patrick Mahomes on this team starting on September 10th, and I think that I would probably consider them certainly a legitimate playoff contender, maybe more than that. Maybe you win 2 or 3 games in the playoffs and make a serious run. I think the roster is competitive and ready to go. If they get better than average quarterback play consistently and have a chance to grow, this team has a chance to compete. It really does.
I think the other thing that we don't talk much about, and it's probably because we've got a new OC and a new offense and a new quarterback, but there's a lot of guys on this team that are coming into like year 3, year 4. And especially, I know I don't want to get into the defense thing again, but these guys have been in the system for a while. So this is like, and I mean, I think that's a real thing in the NFL is it takes time. We don't want to hear it as fans because we just want to win, but it takes time for guys to figure it out. And we've seen it before. We've written off guys. Like I think I won't give examples, but over the last several years, we've written off players. And then the next year we're like, man, he's a lot better. And I think a lot of it is just that time in the system and gaining the confidence and not being able to play without thinking about playing and just reacting. And I think it's still a very young team, but we're like right at that moment. I really feel like we're going to turn a corner.
Well, the other thing I think that it plays into is I think a lot of fans, a lot of people that armchair quarterbacks, they channel their brain to thinking that it's like Madden, where if a guy is rated as a 79, he's going to be a 79. You can't develop and get better, but these are still humans. You know what I mean? Like we're still talking about people, and we're still at any time, anybody that's in Ashburn, right, could be practicing and something could click and their game goes from here to here. And it could be the difference. And we're not confident in our offensive line. I think we've all talked about that. But looking back on the last 3 games of the preseason across all levels of the offensive line, despite a couple of blown, where Brissett scrambled or somebody, but the offensive line did pretty well in pass protection as a whole. And that was one of our major concerns. Now, does that mean they're going to be able to do it against Philly, with Jalen Carter and some of those man children up front? That's yet to be determined, but that also doesn't mean that where they are in week 0 coming into the season doesn't mean that they're not going to be better by week 10 or 12 or 15.
Yep.
We are not getting a lot of love out there either, as far as, and maybe we shouldn't, until we show something, but
Everyone needs to see.
I've heard no one predict that we have a chance to win the NFC East.
To be fair, that's because we have the division with the Eagles. If we were in,
I've never had no one say we're going to be second in the NFC East. We're always dead last or fourth.
Well, and I mean, again, to Derek's point, we're the only team in the NFC East that didn't make the playoffs last year. We're also the only team that arguably didn't have a quarterback.
Right. If we're in the NFC South, I bet you we're getting picked to be contender or possibly win the division.
No one out there knows what Sam Howell can do any more than we do. I guarantee you, if we start 3-1, all of a sudden the national conversation is the Commanders are coming. So, they don't know. But
some of them have, like Pat McAfee. Did you see Pat McAfee come out? Hey, Sam Howell can sling the ball, can he? And
but that hasn't translated to predicting that the Commanders are going to have a good season. It's
True.
just been, hey, Sam looks pretty good. Before we move off defense, because I was the one who was like pouring cold water all over it, in the article that I mentioned earlier, and I'll post it on the thread with this podcast tomorrow, about the defense, Jonathan Allen was quoted in there as talking about that this is for many of them I think this is year 4 for Del Rio, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's correct. Yep.
And that 9 out of the 11 starters are not new. They only are bringing 2 new starters in this year. He was making the point that continuity has made a big, big difference in what he sees in terms of guys know their assignments and they can actually just go make plays now because they're not trying to think it through. That made me feel, believe it or not, better than I did about the defense. Other than Cody Barton and Emmanuel Forbes Jr., all other 9 projected starters have experience in this system and should know what they're doing on day 1.
Oh, better yet, not only 9 of the 12 from last year, but 9 of the 12 from 2020.
Yep.
To 21, right?
You got guys with experience, at least a couple of years.
No, Forrest didn't start in 21.
Yeah, but he was in the defense.
He was in the defense. Yeah, that's true. He was in the defense. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Mostly to me, it's just the idea that even if they weren't starting, even if they were just out there practicing every day and getting reps, they know the system. There's no more excuses for communication breakdowns.
And there's no more excuses for Del Rio. If the system don't work now, You got
Yep.
no excuse. You got the talent, you got the investment, you got the experience. Like, it's time to put this defense needs to be successful.
This is the year. It has to be the year.
I mean, what does he have? 6 first-round draft picks? He's got 6 first-round draft picks to play with.
And arguably a guy who has first round talent in Curl at safety.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it, Curl is one of the most underdrafted players in the last 4 years in the NFL.
Uh-huh.
I don't think anybody will argue over that, but 6 first-round draft picks in his starting 11.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
that's there's no excuse there. And then what, Fuller? I don't even remember where Fuller. No, Fuller
I think
was
he's a
lower
third
round.
rounder.
Third.
I think.
Was he a third?
Yeah.
Third.
He's a third. Mathis was a second. I don't know where Barton was drafted by Seattle. Quan Martin's a third. No, Quan Martin's a second.
Second.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it's not like he's playing with, it's not like he's grabbing low round talent and pulling them up outside of Curl and maybe Forrest. Forrest was like 5th, 6th.
Oh, now I gotta remember.
All right. So Mark said something about if we're 3-1, or maybe it was Derek. No, I
Fifth.
think it was Mark.
5th round pick.
If after 4 weeks we're 3-1, if after 4 weeks we're 3-1, that means we beat either Philadelphia or Buffalo.
Yeah. I think we got a good shot at Buffalo. I think Philly, we'll see, but
That's in Philly. So yeah.
Buffalo's at home, but apparently Von Miller was put on the PUP list, so he will not be available for that game.
correct.
Now, that doesn't mean Josh Allen's not playing on the other side, but he's their primary pass rusher.
Yeah. I mean, I have really no idea. I fully expect us to beat the Cardinals just because, as I think has been mentioned here, they're not really playing to win. And I can't even think of the guy's name. That the intel now is that it won't be Dobbs probably starting, but this 5th round rookie.
Clayton Tune.
Yeah. So if they can't fuck with his head and have him turning it over and seeing shadows out there, then we're not doing our jobs.
Truth is, it almost feels like Arizona's doing the exact opposite of trying to win. It feels like Arizona has already started pre-gaming for a number 1 draft pick next year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even the media is not quite willing to say that, but when you some of the cuts they made are head scratchers.
Well, anybody who looks like they might have given them a chance to win is gone. So I'm gonna start a fake Twitter account for that quarterback out of USC saying, I ain't going to play in Arizona.
Wait until after week 1, though.
Yeah, after week 1. Good call.
Kyler Murray's already working on that account.
And you name the account John Elway is my idol.
and Eli Manning, right? Those are the 2 in our lifetime.
Oh yeah.
I ain't going there. Well, gentlemen, we're getting there.
Yes, sir. We'll be around. If anybody's listening is going to attend the game on September 10th, shoot us a message or anything. Feel free to come by the tailgate. I'm sure we would love to see everybody.
I believe we'll be flying the BGO banner.
Look for the flag.
The BGO flag will be flying high at 8 a.m. on September 10th in the red zone lot. So, all right, fellas, it's been another pleasure, and we'll see you next week.